This presentation is covering the human digestive system, and we're just going to take a look at some key terms that I want you guys to know for the unit that you can understand as we move through the digestive system. What's going on, what are these different organs, and what are the things that they're producing and doing as far as their functions. So you've got a digestive system summary worksheet in your packet of It Takes Guts, or you can do this in your science notebook. Either way, it's fine with me, but just make sure that as you're going along and I'm going through these, that you're recording these somewhere. The first one we have is mouth. Now, it has two parts to it. The mouth does mechanical digestion and it does chemical digestion. So the mechanical part is the teeth and breaking down the food into smaller pieces. And then the chemical side of things happens in the salivary glands and the saliva that they create, and it has this thing called amylase, and it's an enzyme that breaks down starches. And it also does a second thing of lubricating your food. Can you imagine just trying to swallow chewed food that isn't lubricated by spit? It would be a pretty uncomfortable thing to do. But if you ever want to test the properties of saliva and the enzyme's ability, get yourself a piece of cotton candy and lick it. You can kind of feel the cotton candy kind of melting away, or if you get it right in front of you, kind of dribble just a little spit on it, and you'll see that the enzymes in your saliva actually eat through the cotton candy almost like acid. Well, that's that enzyme that's working to break things down and starches into sugars in the beginning of your digestive process as far as your chemical digestion is concerned. The next one is epiglottis, and I just want to stop for a second and tell you, I know I'm going to be moving fairly fast through this, and just remember, you can always stop me at any time and pause me and rewind me if I go a little faster than you want. Now, the thing I like about this is I have this nice GIF here. It shows you the process of how the epiglottis is moving. The epiglottis kind of comes down and it covers up your windpipe or bronchial tube, and it doesn't allow food to go in there. Now, once in a while, if you swallow something very fast or drink something fast, you get a little food actually go into this area, and you get this really hard coughing action. Well, that's an automatic reflex your body has to protect itself, to vent itself and get out any kind of obstruction that accidentally gets in there. But the flap, for definition-wise, epiglottis is a cartilage flap at the root of the tongue. You can kind of see here's the tongue, and it's at the base of it, and it depresses down when you swallow to cover up your windpipe. So, but I think this animation really kind of gives you an idea of how exactly it works. The esophagus is the next one. Now, this is a muscular tube connecting the throat to the stomach, and it moves things using the smooth muscles and through a process called a peristalsis. And basically, if you can see in the animation here, it squeezes and pushes it down. I would liken this to squeezing toothpaste, in a tube. As you get to the end, you try to kind of bring that up, and maybe you take that tube of toothpaste and you put it on the counter and the edge of the counter and kind of rake it across the edge to move those last little bits of toothpaste to the top so you can get all of it out. Well, that's the same thing's kind of going on process-wise as things go down the esophagus. And then right here we have the sphincter here that opens up into the stomach. Now, if you ever have heartburn or other issues, this sphincter here at the bottom sometimes can have issues where it doesn't close properly. You'll get this splashing of hydrochloric acids and other things coming up, burning your esophagus, giving you that burning sensation. Or it could be a pressure sensation as well. Stomach. So after the esophagus, we're moving down the stomach. I have lots of GIFs here, some animations, and there's two parts here. We have mechanical and we have chemical digestion going on here. The enzymes and the chemicals, like acids in the stomach, are doing a lot of chemical digestion. You can kind of see it here and here. This animation here is nicely showing the acid pumps, creating hydrochloric acid to break down the food, and they're throwing in Pepsid in there, but we're not going to worry about that too much. Then this one does a really good job of showing you the muscle contractions that are happening in your stomach as food's moving around. Whenever you hear a really large gurgling of your stomach, this is actually what your stomach's doing. And what it's doing is agitating that food around, moving it around, getting that acid and Pepsid and enzymes around the food as much as it can and get as much penetration and breaking down. Let's move on to the next one. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the liver. So the liver doesn't have direct contact with your food in the sense that the food goes through the liver. The liver is an organ that is on the side that does several jobs, and one of them is digestive. So it cleans your blood, It's a filtering process. So if you ingest alcohol or other things like that, it actually cleans your blood. If you were to remove someone's liver and someone were to have an alcoholic beverage, it would be lethal without the presence of a liver that operates correctly. The second thing, it produces an important digestive liquid called bile, and this thing breaks down fatty foods. Now, this is really what it does, and it also stores energy in the of sugar energy in the form of glycogen. But this animation shows a really great job of what it's doing. So the liver produces the bile, and it comes down into the gallbladder here, and it collects in the gallbladder. And it just kind of shows you the movement. Now, let's go on the gallbladder and look at the gallbladder and see how that works. So the gallbladder is the next step. So the gallbladder is this pouch-shaped organ. There's a collecting area for the bile. So your liver is always producing bile, and puts it in this gallbladder. And then when the gallbladder is activated by food moving down, it'll inject, that enzyme bile into the duodenum right here. And this is kind of where all of the injection sites is. The duodenum happens in this area, and the bile comes in, and the bile has really strong enzymes that break down those fatty foods. So really a lot of meat products. If you're eating meat, this is the guy that's doing it. If you had an issue with your gallbladder and you weren't producing bile, or the bile wasn't getting into this area, and you were to eat a lot of fatty foods, it would result most likely in this pretty killer diarrhea, because your body wouldn't be able to digest it. It'd move on through your system, and it'd be pretty unpleasant. Let's move on to the next one. So we have a lot going on in here. So the pancreas is next. So the pancreas has a big definition for the pancreas, but it's a mix of all these different kinds of enzymes. We call them pancreatic juices, but there's several different ones in there. One of the juices helps neutralize the acidic chyme, which is the term we use for basically the vomit fluid that leaves the stomach. So if you ever vomit, or throw up, you're really throwing out this thing called chyme. And when it leaves the stomach, it goes into duodenum. The pancreas senses this just like the liver and the gallbladder kind of sense this, and it injects its own pancreatic cocktail of juices. Now, within this cocktail are multiple enzymes. I'm not going to get into all of them. It gets pretty complicated, but just know that these enzymes help break down proteins and fats and carbohydrates. And if we were to leave out these enzymes, if we were to eliminate all the enzymes that are breaking your food down, you'd starve. I don't care if you sat down and you ate 50 Big Macs a day. You literally would starve to death without enzymes from the pancreas and from the liver doing their thing to basically speed up at the speed of light the digestive process of breaking food down. So let's go to the duodenum and talk about duodenum. So duodenum is where all this stuff happened with the pancreas and the liver and the gallbladder, where they were injecting their enzymes. And this is the first segment in the small intestine, and it receives partially digested food, this chyme. And this is, again, the injection site for all these enzymes. And going back to the gallbladder, the reason the gallbladder has this kind of sac of collecting the bile is the liver is always producing the bile, but it can't produce enough bile at one snapshot to deal with the food coming through. So that gallbladder just kind of collects it, and then when it senses the food, it's got a nice store, and then it can inject it in there and kind of have that acting. Let's go ahead and continue on. So now your food's moving your small intestine. So it's going through duodenum, and now you can see this animation, the food going through the small intestine. Now the small intestine is the chief site of digestion of food, in the sense that this is where things are broken down significantly to their smallest particle sizes, and this is where all that energy is pulled into the bloodstream. And that happens through these things called villi. So this is kind of a makeshift computer graphic of what the surface area of your your small intestine looks like. And these villi are like small, like little finger-like projections. And their goal is to increase surface area. And they're so efficient in increasing the surface area that even on the ends of these little finger villi, there's even smaller little fingers on top of them. And if you were to spread out the surface area of this guy, we'd be looking at a tennis court, roughly covering the area of a tennis court, if not more, of your small intestine's surface area. And the surface area is so great because the more contact it has with food, touching it, Those are more sites where the food can then cross through the membranes and into the bloodstream, where blood cells can pick up this, the nutrients, and then travel around the body and hand it out to different cells. So really super important area. Small intestine, which contains the villi, which basically do all the absorption of food and nutrients into your body. The rest of the things leading up to were just getting things ready for this particular, spot in the digestive tract. Now, after that, so you've sucked all your food out, the nutrients, you've gotten what you can get out of it. Things now come into the large intestine. The large intestine is simply an area where water reabsorption happens. Now, an interesting thing that happens for different people, some people who are constipated, sometimes the food will stay in here too long. They get very hard stools because the longer it's in there, the more dried out and the more water extraction happens. If it moves too fast through the through the large intestine, then you end up with having diarrhea. So there's a happy balance here. If you're in an area and you're in a climate and say you're really dehydrated, you haven't had a lot of water, your body actually will start to do several things. One thing, your kidneys will stop letting you pee as much, and they'll hold as much water as they can, which makes your urine way more concentrated. The second thing is your large intestine will also kind of take its time, and try to get as much water out as it can and be even more efficient. But this is basically water reabsorption. Then we get into the rectum. This is this area here. It's kind of blinking. This is where feces is stored. And when you get to a certain point and it's filled up, then it's time to use the restroom. And that time we're talking about we're getting to the anus. So we're at the end of the line here. And this is the opening where solid waste leaves the body. And it's a voluntary control system. So everything up until this point was involuntary. You had no control of it. Your body simply is going through an automatic program, moving food through you without really any kind of control that you would have consciously. But when things get to the anus, this is the area where these muscles here, you can control when you release it. And this would kind of be the end of the line, as I said before. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got all those definitions down. If I went too fast, go back and pause and rewind it. But make sure you have these recorded somewhere in your science notebook or on the worksheet, either way. But somewhere you can reference these. I will be having a test over these, so you'll be held accountable for knowing these terms. And also just knowing the basic order and the journey that you just went through as far as in the digestive system. Look forward to seeing you guys in class, and take care.